Welcome to the Practice Squad Pod, episode 14. I'm John. I'm joined by my co host, Mark. Mark, first of all, let's hope your internet doesn't explode this time around. That was a fun first pass at it. But second of all, really appreciate the hat. How are you feeling today?
Feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. This is a motto, not only for just football, but for life. Doesn't make sense, but if you can't walk, if you can't run, then you can't fly, you can't jump, you can't do any of those things, right? It's like doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but to me, it makes sense. And in football, for sure, makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense in football. Now, we are filming this just a couple hours after the trade deadline. My first impression is that I think it's hilarious that Green Bay didn't do anything whatsoever.
Yeah,
I gotta imagine Aaron Rodgers is not very happy about that, even if they sign Odell. Like it just, I saw they tried to go for Brandon Cooks, that just didn't work out. Probably too frugal. Do you think this is Aaron Rodgers like last year as an NFL player in Green Bay? What?
I don't. I mean, I don't think he's having any fun. I don't think he wants to stay around in any sort of a rebuild, and that's kind of what it feels like is starting to happen. And we keep saying every single week, John, that they're going to figure it out. They have the right pieces if they can just click. And we're starting to see they're running out of time. And we said this last time, we're saying it again. I still believe they have the ability to be a good football team and a playoff contending football team, but they're running out of time. I mean, they cannot afford many more losses. The only reason they're okay is because of the division they play in. And there's two really bad teams in that division. And Minnesota, I'm still not completely believing that they're as good as they are, right? As good as the record is. But yeah, this could be his last season for sure. Also, could be Tom Brady's last season. Um,
I think it's definitely Tom Brady's last season.
well, I don't know. With the divorce, he might play forever.
Right? He'll just play until they
He
don't
has
let him
nothing
play
else
anymore.
anymore, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
I don't know. But to your point about the trade deadline, I think it shows you a few things, right? I mean, we talked about teams maybe going all in, right? Those teams that are right on the fringe of being contenders that are right there. For example, Miami being right there. The 49ers going from McCaffrey, right? Like just teams that are missing a piece or two from being really a threat to win the Super Bowl. Those kind of teams, even the Bills, right? Even the Bills made a few small additions, at running back. Those are the teams that you're starting to see make moves, right? Because they believe they're right there. Minnesota went and got Hawkinson, another team that thinks they're right there. They're trying to cash in at the right time, like the Rams did last year, which is kind of the copycat thing that we talked about in episode 1 of this whole thing. Um, but with that being said, there's also bad teams that are making some bad trades. And this is a theme every year. You wait for those teams that are bad to do something exciting in the trade deadline. And it's like you're bad for a reason. You have nothing to lose. Chicago, I don't really understand. Like, why are you trying to go get Claypool? Like you're in a rebuild. Why would you
Yeah.
do that?
I
The
don't
Lions,
understand that one, especially just because of
no,
you clearly are trading away all your best players for draft capital. You pretty much let
right. It doesn't make
your
any
two
sense.
star edge rushers go. You got rid of Robinson in the off. Like you're clearly in rebuild, accumulate draft capital, and then you go and swing on a receiver that's unproven, and
No,
you're going to have to pay big
it's
money, I
terrible.
believe, next year, right?
Yeah,
It's Claypool's last year on his rookie
it's
contract, so
it's not smart by any means. And then you can look at it like, well, at least the Bears made a move to get someone right. And you can look at a lot of people look at the Hawkinson thing and think it's a good thing, and we'll get into it. But you know, depending how you look at it, the Lions getting picks, that's great, right? You have a lot of draft picks here the next few years, but the Lions historically don't draft well. So it's like you can get all the picks you want, but the players that have already proven that they can do it in the NFL are few and hard to come by here in Detroit. A guy like Hawkinson, I mean, think about how many tight ends we've tried and missed on before getting Hawkinson, you know?
right. Yeah, and I go both ways about it. I think we could have gotten more for him is really my problem. I don't have a problem trading him away. I just think that a second and
Exactly.
a third next year, I think you could have done a little better than that. Maybe 2 seconds,
Right. And
maybe
I
a
and I
first.
get they didn't
I don't
want to
know.
pay him and all that stuff. And listen, again, you can see both sides. I'm sure we'll debate this. We have a few guests coming on that are Lions fans as well here pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, I think the moral of the story is bad teams continue to kind of make questionable bad trade moves, and the contending teams, the teams that are doing it the right way, that find ways to be in the playoff picture, the Super Bowl contending picture, are the teams that make the right moves at the right time during trade deadline. And We've seen it time and time again over the years, and this year I think we saw a few teams become legitimate contenders, and we saw some of the bad teams just get even worse or set themselves up to not get any better in the future and stay bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, because I do think there are things to discuss with this Hawkinson trade, let's bring our guests on. So we had Cole Patritto on for the athlete mental health episode. That's Mark's, middle brother. I guess you have a lot of siblings for those that don't know, and so do I. So first, we're going to be bringing on Anthony Twan Patritto, Mark's youngest brother. Anthony, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. And then we're going to bring on also Twan's old quarterback, Carter Ferris, Adams football legend. How you doing, bud? I think you're muted, Carter. Well, Carter figures that out, though. I personally think that as far as this Hawkinson trade goes, that overall, like, you need to get draft capital. And honestly, Mark, I understand that you don't totally agree with, the idea that Lions draft well, but I do think Brad Holmes is kind of an exception to this. I think his past two draft classes have been really solid. And, regardless of what happens with Dan Campbell in the future, I do think Holmes hopefully sticks around. If Campbell doesn't make it to year 3 or year 4, I do hope that he does. So I guess we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, Twan, what's your first impression on it?
Of the trade?
Yeah.
I honestly don't like it very much, but I was talking to some of my boys, and they said that Hawk wasn't a great blocker, and a tight end that can't block is pretty much useless in the NFL. So,
especially with the way the Lions are starting to run the ball.
And they got Amon-Ra, they got Swift, so offensively they still should be fine. It's not like tight end is a detrimental position to have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I see it both ways. Like I said, like I started to hint on, you don't want to end up paying him a bit. I think that Hawkinson is like a problem for.
Who is that, Ferris?
Yeah, Carter's getting booted until further notice.
I'm gonna try that again. That was Ferris, right? That was causing.
Yeah, that was Ferris. That
okay,
was
I muted myself, and all right. But like I was saying, I think that it's a solid trade if you're looking at it the way that Jon and Twan are looking at it. But the problem with it, I think, is you could have gotten more maybe. And again, it's putting your belief in drafting well. And the Lions, like you said, yes, historically they haven't drafted well. Jon, I know they've had a couple drafts in a row with some promise, but I don't know, right? Like, who knows if this guy's even going to be around? Campbell, I think, is probably halfway out the door right now. And, I don't know. Brad Holmes has done okay. I'm not completely a believer yet. I mean, we still suck. We have some good players and we're still not winning. And obviously you can't put that on him. But, I don't know. I just think that this trade, again, you're in a rebuild. I think the Lions are starting to. And what I really hope doesn't happen is that they start to use stuff like this as an excuse to keep the coaches around and say, oh, we're rebuilding again. And it's like, well, no, we're not, right? Like, it's not okay, because this was supposed to be our year, but we turn things around and we just keep extending that. So I don't know. It's we'll see what Carter has to say. We'll try to bring him on.
Let's try one more time.
Ferris is more of the trade expert.
Either that was Satan, or I don't know what's happening to Ferris. If you're listening to it, you might think that he's possessed or something really bad.
Thank God that most of our audience is a YouTube-based audience.
Oh my God!
Because anybody on Spotify would just be like, "What is going on right now?"
Very scary stuff there.
Can you not edit that out?
No, we can.
We could,
and we probably will. But honestly, I think there was a good comedic factor to that. So
it is.
We'll see.
It is.
Yeah, but Mark, I do agree with you, and I'd say like the the job of the GM is to draft good players, right? And so far, I feel like he's had late round hits, and to me, that there's a lot of value in that, right? Because it's like it's pretty hard to mess up like your first 2 rounds. I feel like to some degree, the picks are kind of selected for you, especially in the first round. Like it's like just best talent available, position of highest need, wherever that kind of ratio crossover is where you're going with. But then he hits on guys like Amon Ra, he hits on guys like Rodriguez, he hits on guys like I think Kirby Joseph honestly has a lot of promise. Like so I'm thinking if we can accumulate draft capital and actually use those later rounds effectively, which I think he's setting himself up to do, I could see him sticking around in a post Dan Campbell era if they can't turn it around in year 3, which I think is, kind of what we're looking at right now is I don't think they're going to fire Dan Campbell this offseason. Even if they don't win a game for the rest of the season, I think he's going to get a shot.
John, I think they might fire him before the season ends. I think it's getting to that point where he's lost pretty much all of Detroit except for a select few people. And those select few people just happen to be the people that make that decision. The owners, like for some reason, they just don't know when. Like it's obviously not working. I've been saying it since last year that he's not a good head coach. We're seeing it time and time again. They find ways to lose games, and they're not a bad football team. That's the worst thing about it. They're not a bad football team, and they continue to lose games that they shouldn't lose against even good teams. Like they're playing some good teams, and they're competing, and they're moving the ball, and they're doing everything, and they've had some good defensive performances, but it just doesn't all line up ever at the right time, and that can't happen. And that is on coaching. It really is. So, and
no, the lack of
Campbell is the head of the
consistency
coach.
is very much Lions brand in the first place.
Right.
And
Right.
I think Dan Campbell might be the most Lions coach the Lions have ever had, right? A lot to get juiced up about and inspired by, and then just falling flat on your face when it's time to deliver.
Well, Dan Campbell's the kind of guy, John, that would wear this hat that says "run the damn ball" and then not run the ball. That's the type of guy he is. You know what I mean? Like he just he likes to
pass it on
likes to
first and
say
10.
stuff. Right. He likes to say stuff and do stupid things and whatever. But let's get into Twan. I have another thing. Let's go to college football for a second. While we're on this whole, while we have Twan on here, and I know we lost Carter, but they're both students at Michigan State, and I don't know how big of fans they are of Spartan football. But Twan, I mean, what is the word around, some of your buddies? What do you think of not only the game, but the aftermath in the tunnel?
I'd say Ferris, he's still a Michigan fan. Me, I don't really care. But like that just kind of shows like this program's trash. Like to have your players to act like that and after a game, after losing, you go backstage or back in the locker room and like jump a dude. And Mel Tucker, like he swung at someone walking out of the stadium too. There's a video of that. So it's more than just the players. It's the whole system.
Right. And Twan, just and to make this, personal towards you as well, for those that don't know, Twan was working on having an opportunity of walking on to Michigan State as a player a few years ago. And this was shortly after Mel Tucker's hire. This was, right when they're starting to kind of turn into the Mel Tucker era. And Anthony had really good high school film, was in communication with the receivers coach. We had a few connections that were alumni of Michigan State that helped put a good word in for him. And in my mind, and I might be biased too, but he was good enough to definitely deserve at least a walk-on spot at Michigan State and a chance to be on the team and at least be on the scout team for the, practice squad look, for the practice squad pod for at least the first year. And they dropped the ball. And, they were not good in communicating and basically didn't really get back to Anthony and didn't give him any sort of answer. And by the time that they had anything to say, it was kind of too late. And so, just stuff like that. But that's like a little small example, but I'm sure that's happened with other kids. I'm sure they've missed on bigger athletes than Anthony. And I'm sure that the culture there, I mean, it all stems from little things. Everything you do, as small as it is, I mean, it extends to the biggest things. And like Twan said, Mel Tucker, I saw the video as well. A fan tried to touch him while he was walking out, and he did try to slap the guy's hand down. Can't happen no matter what happens as a coach. You cannot go after a fan like that. And then obviously his players living by the same philosophy, like Anthony said, it's inexcusable. And number one on Michigan, no doubt about it, was going in there at the wrong time, knew he wasn't supposed to be in there. That's Angelo Anthony, by the way. He's from East Lansing. If people out there didn't know, I'm sure he had a lot to say after last year's loss. He took a lot of shit in social media and stuff after that loss. He was a hometown kid. A lot of people thought he was going to go to Michigan State, committed to Michigan. But anyways, he was talking shit, going in there, doing the wrong thing. Doesn't warrant a guy without a helmet on to get jumped by 5, 6, 7 people with helmets on, including one of them swinging a helmet at a dude who's not wearing a helmet. Like that is, I mean, it's assault. It is assault. Jim Harbaugh, I don't love the guy, but he's right about this in this instance. That's, I mean,
you can be very seriously injured. Those helmets are obviously not soft. I mean,
no.
And look, I'm a huge Michigan fan, so I will take any opportunity to, dunk on Michigan State and their trash program and their new coaching administration that stinks. I do have to also say that Juwan Howard swung at an assistant coach last year and exact same thing, right? Completely unacceptable. Super inappropriate. Absolutely cannot have it. I was actually surprised that he kept his job just on that basis alone. I feel like coaches doing that
too.
At all in any way, shape, or form is just completely inappropriate.
I almost think it's worse, John, though. It was a fan. That I know Tucker didn't make contact with, he didn't try to fight this guy, but he went after a fan. Like there's just
right.
It was actually a state fan trying to
it was someone reached out trying to touch his head, and I don't know if he actually even touched his head, but like you cannot go after, like the security had to grab Mel Tucker.
Yeah,
like
no,
I mean, who knows what he would have done if he got a free, a free route to that guy. So
exactly. And and it starts at coaching, right? Exactly. Yeah. And you set that precedent, and now your players think it's appropriate to swing a helmet at somebody. And like that is the standard that you set. All three of us here are disciples of Coach Tony Patritto to some degree. And, I think the things that he taught us, just as far as like, if you barked at a guy, you'd get in trouble, right? If somebody was talking shit and you said anything back whatsoever that was completely inappropriate, and you'd get chewed out for that, right? So, there's that method, and then there's thinking it's okay that, to swing on a fan, and then your players think it's okay to swing on a player. It's just absolutely inappropriate. So yeah, on the football side of it, though, Michigan looks great. I think that they're definitely a playoff team as long as they can take care of Ohio State in a few weeks. So really pumped to hopefully see them in the playoffs. I know that the college football rankings debuted this week, and Michigan debuted at 5 with them. So, I guess there's still a little bit left to prove. I assume beating Ohio State will do that. How are you guys feeling about, I think Tennessee debuted at number 1. How do you guys feel about that?
Disagree. Georgia's number 1 in the country. Fact.
I agree with that as well.
I agree, but I also, I can see why they put Tennessee 1 right now. The rankings, the way they do it, changes week to week, and right now the most impressive resume is Tennessee. They've beaten better teams than Georgia, and they've done it in a more convincing fashion. When it all comes down to it, who would win tomorrow? Georgia, right? But that's, Georgia's had a couple games that didn't look too good. Their schedule hasn't been as tough as Tennessee's yet, so
I think they play each other this week, though.
Is it this week or is it?
I think it is this week, and it's in Georgia. So
yeah. So see, the rankings will change rather quickly, and even if they don't play each other, right? Like Michigan could jump up to number 2. Like they're really, really quick to change how they rank the teams in the college football playoff. More than just on who they play and how they play them, it's how does the team look every week? If Michigan came out and beat Michigan State 50-0, they'd probably be 1 or 2 in the country right now. But it changes. So every week you have a new opportunity, and the best 4 teams will get in. And like me and John have talked about in former episodes, they're extending that playoff, and that could be happening as soon as next year. So I think once that happens, there's never going to be any doubt that the best team will win it, right? Because you get the top 12 teams in there, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely looking forward to that expansion, because I'm frankly very tired of teams that look great not getting a chance, or, teams that go undefeated, but, they're not like a Power 5 school or Power 5, team. And so nobody really cares because they don't feel like they beat anybody significant. Like, yeah, it definitely stinks. And, I'm curious to see too, like, NFL expanded to a 17-game season. I've heard rumors about them trying to expand to an 18-game season. I'm curious if college is going to kind of see the revenue that this is bringing in, the NIL stuff, and also think about, expanding the number of games that a team plays in a season. Obviously, the playoffs naturally are going to expand that in the first place. So I'm kind of curious to see how they go about this in the future. I wouldn't be totally surprised if college football, including playoffs, ends up turning into like a 16, 18 total game season by the time it's all said and done 3-4 years from now. But yeah. So quickly back to NFL too. Dolphins did not look great against the Lions defensively in that first half. And they just made a pretty big blockbuster trade to go get Chubb from the Broncos. I think the Broncos are deep enough that that's not really going to be an issue for them defensively. I think a lot of people were scratching their heads. I think right now a first rounder for the Broncos is more valuable, especially since they, gave basically all of them away for Russell Wilson, who isn't doing a whole lot for them. Twan, what's kind of your opinion on that? And do you think that the Dolphins are, a potential Super Bowl contending team? Like they're kind of acting like with the way that they're, signing big names and taking big swings and both trades and free agency this past season.
Yeah, that addition of Bradley Chubb is it's huge because their offense right now is clicky on all cylinders. But obviously, I know they have a great secondary when they're healthy. So you had a good pass rusher to a good secondary behind you, and that makes the whole difference in the defense. And I want to go back to the Broncos. I do not think they're dead. I think they can find their way into a wild card. I think they have the guys to do it if Russell Wilson starts playing like himself. He has a good receiving core. He's just not. I don't know.
It's bold,
he can
Twan.
figure it out. He can figure it out.
It is bold. I mean, they won against the Jags over in London, obviously. So, I guess those high knees worked out for Russ. He's loose enough to make it happen.
Confirmed that the poop story was false, by the way, if you listen to our last episode, sadly.
It was that. I mean, good satire because it definitely had both of us going. That was a real thing.
I mean, I believed it. The dude's insane. This is the same guy that air high fives people. I mean, he believes things are there that aren't there. Like, he's like, this is the same guy that calls him Mr. Unlimited. That's what he calls himself. So, yeah. I mean, I would believe that he thinks he could have unlimited ability to not poop. I would believe that.
The thing with the Finns, though, I don't know if they'll get a home game because they're in the same division as the Bills. So they're always going to be playing on the road, which will make them hard to get to the Super Bowl. But
yeah, and you know how the warm teams are, right? Like that Miami team, they get used to Miami weather. I don't know. Those guys get comfortable down there in vacation world, and then they try to, go play a nice cold game somewhere else, and it's like
Arrowhead.
Right, if they go to New York or Buffalo or anywhere like that, like you're in trouble. Because I don't know how Tua's going to do. He's from Hawaii. I don't know how he's going to do in the cold.
Then he went to Bama, so he's really never been in the cold.
He's never been in the cold. All his playoff games in college were in domes. He's right. Like it's the same thing. Like Jared Goff isn't going to be good in the cold. He hasn't won a cold game in his whole career. So, I don't know. There's just honestly, some guys that are built for it.
I get Ford Field's a dome, but I feel like you kind of have to be like a cold weather quarterback or cold weather player to like play in Detroit, though. Like
you should be, but I don't. Jared Goff isn't.
No, oh no, he's definitely sunshine.
He's a Cali boy
for sure.
We're not there yet. Hasn't been cold, but that's why his stats are good right now.
Right, he looks good when it's we'll see what he looks like in a few weeks when he plays in the cold.
Well, and then, and excuse me for not knowing this, the Lions are playing Green Bay at home this coming week and then going to Lambeau, or is it the other
Lambeau
way
at the end? Lambeau's the last game of the season. Twan, myself, my dad, and my brother, and a couple other people are actually attending that game. So I will look to do something podcast-wise from that game live, potentially, and definitely be on the TikTok and live reporting during that game. And hopefully the game matters. Hopefully Green Bay's pushing, or maybe Lions turn it around, or hopefully the Lions don't win another game and I'm rooting for them to lose so we can have the number 1 draft pick.
Right.
We'll see, right? I don't know. It literally could go either way because the Lions have shown the ability to probably run off 5 or 6 wins. I mean, they've been in just about every game they've played except for New England. Dallas was, I mean, you could argue it, but they were in it for most of the game. So we'll see what happens with Detroit.
Yeah, we'll see. I definitely would still prefer not to have to take the ACT. My hopes are pretty low on that one, but if
I mean,
they
that's
can,
so embarrassing.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
you're
if
gonna
they
be
can, they can clutch out another 5 games here, that would be great, just for my own sake. But otherwise, I am hoping they just tank for that number 1 draft pick. I think that's it's probably the best route to go at this point. Twan, before we let you go here, any hot takes or any things that you're looking at for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I want to ask you guys something. Me myself, I'm a betting man. I had the Rams winning that division. In that division, I just want to get your thoughts on. Everyone is like even in the division. Obviously, the Niners have the tiebreaker over the Rams because they beat them twice. But Seahawks are winning right now at 5-3. Everyone else is 4-3 or 3-4. And I don't know if any of those teams are good. Like, are the Cards, Niners?
the
I
Niners are
think the
good. I think.
Niners are not only a good team, but I think either them or the Eagles are most likely to make it to the Super Bowl on the NFC side, in my opinion. We've seen this year over year over year. The Niners never are a great early season team, and then they always put it together late season, and then they are always terrifying to play in the playoffs. And I don't think this year's any exception. Whether or not they win their division, it's crazy that the Seahawks are, currently number 1. I'd say the Niners are most likely to win the division at this point. I think the Rams are going to struggle the rest of the season, honestly. I think they don't have it put together. I think that they're struggling too much defensively, and they don't have the offensive line to support getting anything going offensively. So I was dead wrong about them. Twan, I had the exact same, mentality as you going into this season, but it just didn't pan out that way, and the Rams
And
look really rough.
that's Mark's boys, McVay over there. Can't figure out how to put the ball in the end zone.
Hey, you
And
know what he doesn't do? He doesn't do this anymore.
he doesn't
He
have
doesn't
anyone
run
to do that.
You know
with.
who does do that?
The 49ers and
The
the Eagles.
49ers and the Eagles. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you run the ball, like, chances are you're going to be successful, man. Like, I don't care what level of football you're at. So, the teams that have consistently been winning run the ball well and set up play action and play complementary defense on the other side. So that's what the teams that are doing well in the league are doing. And there's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack that are trying to figure out their identity and decide who they are.
Well, and Mark, what did we say about the 49ers too? Like,
When they
game
got
planning for
McCaffrey.
them is going to be ridiculous with Debo and
Right.
McCaffrey. What did
And you saw
McCaffrey
them
do this past week?
threw a touchdown,
Rushing
caught a
touchdown. Yep, exactly. You already
Like,
know
they
where I
did
was going with
everything.
that.
Like, I mean, and listen, it's only going to get harder and harder to defend them as he gets more, fitted into that offense. And again, like, we haven't even really seen them utilize him and Debo. And what they're probably going to do is they're going to save some stuff and they're going to, take turns kind of who they're riding. And when it comes playoffs, nothing is held back. I mean, you're going to see them unload everything that he's got, every trick in the book, whether it's a Debo run, whether it's McCaffrey throwing, whether it's play action, trick plays, just different running schemes, and getting both those guys the ball in space. Like, I mean, it's not easy to defend. And he's a smart coach. Jimmy G's a smart game manager. Doesn't have to make a ton of big throws to win. He just has to do his job, and he's in a perfect situation to do that. And they're definitely a threat. And the Eagles look really, really good as well. I'm starting to think maybe I'm wrong about my prediction a few weeks ago about I don't know how good they are. They look really good, man, and they keep stacking wins. So Twan, I'm sorry your bet didn't pan out.
Yeah. What about
But
school? The Vikings, Eagles, and the Niners. I think those 3 teams are the teams in that NFC.
I don't believe in much. I don't believe in the Vikings as much as the other 2 teams, but they have just enough to be able to maybe do it. But I don't believe in Kirk Cousins yet.
And they just added Hawk, so they got Thielen, Hawk, JJ, Dalvin. It's a good
They
squad.
have a good offense. They have a better defense than they had last year, but they still have Kirk Cousins at quarterback. And I'm gonna take Jimmy G in that running game, and I'm gonna take the Eagles and what they're able to do both sides of the ball probably over Minnesota.
I agree, but I also think right now, which this is not saying much whatsoever, but I think that they are definitely the favorite to win the NFC North. Like I don't see any indication that Green Bay is going to turn it around quickly enough, and Vikings are going to start sucking enough that they get, they lose that 3-game lead they currently have over Green Bay, plus the
Yeah.
tiebreaker. So
I'll say this: I'm not going to give up on Green Bay yet because Aaron Rodgers is still a quarterback of that team, and I'm telling you, if in terms of what they have on that roster, if just a few more things go right, they're a step away from being good. And if the Packers can get into the playoffs, I would put the Packers right back in there in the competition of teams in the NFC that can get to the Super Bowl. So
I don't
they're
disagree
right
with
there.
you at all. No, I don't. But I think they're fighting for a wild card spot at this point just because of the math, right? Like
Yeah, and
overcoming a 3-game deficit.
I
It's
would
tough.
also throw Dallas into that conversation just
Nah,
because of
Dallas
their
stinks.
Dallas's ability to run the ball, and if they use Dak correctly, then they have a chance, right? Because that defense is scary, and they have just enough on offense to be dangerous. So the NFC is more open than I think people think.
What do you think about Pollard versus Zeke and that entire situation, Twan? Do you think that they should be making sure Pollard gets a healthy amount of touches, maybe even be an RB1, or do you think that they're a little too attached to the money that they paid Zeke in the same way that Dak's probably QB1, even though I'm not sure if he's really all that he's made out to be.
Well, first off, I think Dak's way better than Cooper Rush. Like he really is. But I am a big fan of Zeke, and he's a good back. He'll get you 4 or 5 yards of carry. Pollard is more explosive. I mean, and they utilize them the right way. Like when they both play, they get around the same amount of touches. Zeke's the power back, and Pollard's the explosive back, and you can use Pollard as a surprise with something up the middle because they don't think it's going up the middle because that's usually Zeke. So, and I think they've been managing that well and surprising the defenses and getting them both yards and touches and
When
keeping them
healthy,
both happy.
when healthy, do you think they're the best running back tandem in the league?
Uh, Let me think real quick. I
I
think
mean, the Lions have Swift and
no.
Williams is pretty good.
No.
I think
The
it has to be.
The Eagles run a few different guys. The Bills have a few different guys, including Josh Allen.
If you're
Like,
including the quarterbacks, I'm going Eagles because you got Hurts, Sanders, and like
I think
those
you
2
have to
guys
include
coming in.
quarterbacks because I think you have to, as a defense, prepare for it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I think
if it's just running backs, I think it's the Cowboys. But
yeah, I agree, and I think you're right. I think when they use them both, they're at their best. But I kind of agree with John. I think Pollard is better than Zeke if you had to pick one on any given day of who gives us the best chance to win if we only can play one of these two guys. I think they're better with Pollard. I think he's more explosive, like you said, and I think he can do a lot of the same things Zeke can do, but he's better at other things. He's better out of the backfield when he catches the ball. He has the ability to separate better. And he seems to hit the hole just as fast as Zeke. And when he gets there, instead of breaking a couple tackles and getting 6-7 yards, there's times where he breaks that tackle and he gets 40 yards. And you don't see Zeke do that too often anymore, like he used to. But again, they paid Zeke, they paid Dak, and whatever anybody says, people have opinions on Cooper Rush, people have opinions on Zeke. Listen, whoever they pay, that's who Jerry's going to put on the field. That's who he's going to make McCarthy put on the field. He said, listen, I'm writing the checks for Dak and for Zeke. There's a reason Zeke got fat. All right. It's because he got paid. So they're gonna play their guy that they paid. That's just at the end of the day.
Who is that the Packers running back that blew up after he got paid too?
Eddie
Lacy?
Lacy,
Yeah, that dude got
He
huge.
got fat.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was always a
such a-
little bit fat.
He was, but man, his last like 1 or 2 seasons in the league, it's like, oh, is that an offensive lineman they got back there? All right, and gosh, there was something on the tip of my tongue that I forgot it. So, that's what it was. Sean Payton potentially being the coach of the Dallas Cowboys next year. What's your under over on that?
well, the thing is McCarthy and them are doing good enough job to not fire him. And you know what? You know what really pisses me off, John. And we can use this as the example. Twan, you'll put your input in, and then we'll send you on your way. But the standard of what you expect as a franchise it shouldn't be really any different for any NFL teams. The Dallas Cowboys might fire Mike McCarthy if he doesn't win a playoff game. That is a high standard, right? I mean, it's really hard to make the playoffs, let alone win a game, let alone make a run. He might get fired if he only wins one or playoff game. I mean, it's a Super Bowl thought in Dallas. Detroit should have the same thought. I don't care what anyone says. If you're the Detroit Lions and you're not a first-year coach, you're in your second or third year, and Dan Campbell's in his second year, and you're as bad as they are right now and not showing any signs of improvement, you should be fired. There is like, I mean, Joe said this a few episodes ago. I've said this for a long time now, long time before this podcast even started. There's the patience that certain teams have with certain coaches makes no sense, because even at Dan Campbell's very, very best, he's not Sean Payton. So there's better options out there. And clearly it's not working. You're not anywhere near where you want to be as a franchise. If you think winning 4 games is good enough and getting low draft picks and rebuilding every single year, eventually you're going to get the right guy. It eventually will happen. Dan Campbell's not the right guy. Mike McCarthy might not be the right guy. And here's the difference. Dallas, when they realize that, they'll fire him and they'll bring in Sean Payton. They'll bring in somebody else. Detroit, they'll say, Dan Campbell's pretty good. He might be the best guy we can get. I don't know if we can get a Sean Payton-esque guy. So let's just keep him around for another year. We'll sell a lot of shirts. We'll sell out our stadium because he's entertaining, and we'll win 3 games. And that really frustrates me because I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the Jets. I don't care if you're the Patriots. I don't care if you're the Bills, Packers. It doesn't matter. If your team is not winning and you're not showing any signs of improvement, and you've reached a dead end with that coach, and it's not his first year, I think you got to start over. I mean, there's just no time for patience in the NFL. We've seen teams turn around in 1 year. New York Giants are an example. It can happen.
Twan, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that Campbell, he's fine. I don't think it's just hard to work with what he has. Like, that defense, they're horrible everywhere. D-line terrible, backers horrible, and DB's terrible. So, and you can't win a game with no defense. Like, it's impossible. But would I rather have Sean Payton? Yes. I don't even think Sean Payton would come to Detroit anyway. But
you never
and
know.
I also think Mike
I'm
McCarthy
not saying
is
it's
a good
Sean
coach.
Payton. I think McCarthy is a good coach. But I'm just saying, there's better coaches out there than Dan Campbell that are available. And we actually, I think Robert Saleh is a better coach than Dan Campbell. I think that's been proven now. But at the time, they both were being interviewed by Detroit, and we chose Dan Campbell. It just goes to show what he's done with the New York Jets. And I don't think the Jets have much more talent than Detroit does. I mean, maybe they have a better defense, sure, but they have a young quarterback. They have young skill position. They have a young offensive line. They play in a harder division than we do. There's no excuse. He's had more success in New York, and the Jets are just as cursed as the Lions were at the time of these hires.
That's part of my frustration, honestly, Mark, is just the turnaround time, right? Like,
there is no time
Daboll's turned around the Giants in year 1. Saleh's turned around the Jets in year 2. Sirianni's turned around the Eagles in year 2, right? So that's where I get frustrated, is like, for the longest time, I was kind of bought in on the lie that, it takes 2 or 3 years to kind of rebuild the team, coaching administration to get things right. Honestly, I think in the modern NFL, if you're aggressive, that is not the case whatsoever. I mean, even look at Mike McDaniel, year 1. Yeah. Owner management got really aggressive, and they're seeing results, right? And like, no, are they Super Bowl, or these teams we mentioned Super Bowl caliber teams? Well, I guess 2 of them potentially are, maybe not, but at the same time, like, they're above 500. And if Dan Campbell's above 500 in year 2, Detroit is going nuts, right? If we even get 7 wins, right? Detroit is going crazy.
Everyone thought was possible.
Everybody thought was
not
possible.
Everyone. Let's
sorry,
you
except
guys,
the stooge, Mark.
I did.
It's the most bet. Like, it was,
you guys bought into all the
in
Mickey Mouse bullshit. He's wearing a Mickey Mouse hat. If anyone's watching the podcast, he's literally wearing a Mickey Mouse golf hat. He bought into the Mickey Mouse bullshit of Hard Knocks and the T-shirts and grit and bite kneecaps. All that sounds so good and sells on hats like I'm wearing. But the problem is it doesn't guarantee that you're going to do anything on the field. You can talk all you want, but he's an idiot. Dan Campbell's not a smart football coach. He's not a good game manager. And you guys can defend him all you want because you think that he's a badass. And he is. He's a badass, but he's not a winner. He's not a good head football coach. He'll make a great position coach or strength coach or whatever down the road. But we need a different head coach. It's not going to work with Dan Campbell. I don't care who we get at quarterback. I don't care who else we add in the next few draft classes. We're never gonna win more than 5 or 6 games with Dan Campbell.
So you'd prefer to just move off of him this season,
Yes.
cut your losses.
I want to fire him now. Him now and get a different have an interim head coach. Tank this year, whatever. Get another draft pick next year in the top, 2 or 3, maybe even first overall the way it's looking, and build on it. We don't have to necessarily draft a quarterback. Like Will Anderson from Alabama is a franchise-changing player. You get that guy on the opposite side of Hutchinson. You automatically have a defense that's going to be much improved. I don't care who you put behind those guys. You keep Goff, maybe. I think he's shown enough to maybe be around a little longer, and you could probably get him for cheaper than any type of max deal. And then I think you will look into free agency and try to add a stud or two. And then I think you're right there as a contender. Like we said, Green Bay might be down, Rodgers might be out of the league after this year. The Bears are going to be in a rebuild for a few years, it sounds like. And yeah, Minnesota's dangerous, but again, with Kirk Cousins, I don't fully believe in them. So
yeah, and we almost beat them this year, and we're clearly a much worse team than they are.
Yeah,
so.
The problem in the division has always been Rodgers, right? And he seems to be on the decline / on his way out. So now's the time to cash in if you're Detroit. Minnesota's doing it.
Right. Yeah, and Green Bay, I don't know if they really have a future without Rodgers, right? Who's going to be QB there? It's a tough decision. Also, Twan, sorry, we've said we're going to relieve you of your duties like 4 times now, and then we kept talking. We appreciate you coming on. Any last comments before we let you go here?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Thanks for having me, though.
Of course. Thanks so much for coming
on.
Tell
Carter to get his mic fixed.
Dude, I don't know. He's like saying it's working.
Whatever. It's clearly not working. Yeah. Go check on him in the other room, see if he's dead, possessed by like some Stranger Things shit.
He probably is.
Yeah,
Vecna came for sure. Day after Halloween, yeah. That makes sense.
Vecna might have been in his room, Twan. So go check on him.
All right, good work, gentlemen. Twan. Good work.
Peace.
See ya.
Let's get screen share in here. You can pull up kind of what our situation looks like here. So I went 11-4. Mark went 8-7 this week, so I'm feeling pretty good. Honestly, if I stayed with my like stupid loyalty to the Saints, would have gone 12-3 there. That shutout against the Raiders was beautiful. Mark, we might just skip around here because I do feel like we ended up talking about a few of these teams and matchups. I do want to start with the Saints Raiders because, man, that's like the Saints football that I remember from like 2 years ago that I just really miss, of just absolutely dominant defense, and the offense just like gets it done. First question is, can the Saints win their division? That is atrocious, probably the worst in the league. And then the second question is, are the Raiders dead? And man, like, if you're Devontae Adams, how do you feel right now? Right? Those are kind of the 2 questions circulating around this matchup for me.
Yeah, to answer your first thing, yes, the Saints can win the division, and it pains me to have to say that to you. I know you're a Saints fan. You're probably getting all excited over there. Yeah, they can. They can win the division. That division's terrible. Tom Brady and the Bucs don't look like Tom Brady and the Bucs, and yeah, that division's wide open. The Falcons are leading the division right now, so yeah, I would say the Saints can win the division.
Who had that on their bingo card? Right, seriously, between them and the Seahawks, it's like
it's unbelievable, right? But that's the NFL. The Raiders are dead, yes, unfortunately, and that division you can't fall to the start that they've had. Very sad because I really think they're probably one of the top 10 talented teams in the league if you just look at a roster. But they play in a tough division. They've gotten to an awful start, and they still have to play the Chiefs, still have to play the Chargers. The Broncos are still a tough game every week because of how good their defense is. And then they still have a tough out of league conferences play as well. So they're dead. And then to answer Devontae Adams' question, he's lost from home, man. He's wandered from home, right? Green Bay, if he was still there, they'd be on top of the division. They'd probably be chilling there. They probably maybe would have just beat the Bills, and Rodgers would still be here for another 3-4 years. And the fact, it's just really sad that they couldn't have made that work. What a great connection those two were. And he had a good one with Derek Carr in college, but it's just not the same. And it takes more time to become something like Rodgers and Devontae were.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I think Devontae was under the impression that like he would be happier, playing with his college buddy and things like that. We can clearly tell he is not happier based off of what happened a couple weeks ago. He is frustrated and upset. And per Green Bay, right? Like I definitely think, a couple of those losses that they, shouldn't have lost with the Commanders and the Jets, like I think they win those games with Devontae there, especially with kind of where they did spend their draft capital this past season. So it's unfortunate because like you said, he's wandered from home, and
Yeah.
I think both parties ended up worse off. I don't think Devontae's happy and probably regretting his decision, and obviously like the Rodgers era is probably coming to a close at the end of the season because of that as well. So
Yeah, I agree.
sucks.
John, I'd like to jump into a game if you don't mind, if we're
Of course.
bouncing around. This is, we talk about what gets you fired up every week. This gets me fired up. And it is probably, if you look at the games of this past week, it was the least expected game you would think would get me fired up. The Falcons, Panthers, garbage, two teams, right? And listen, we say that, right? The Falcons are now leading that division. Unbelievable. But I'm more fired up about that game and how it happened. If you didn't see the ending, go and watch the ending because
Unreal.
unbelievable play by PJ Walker to DJ Moore. He threw the farthest throw in this modern day era. It was like a 69-yard throw in the air, and he caught it for a touchdown with about almost under a minute left. It was like essentially a Hail Mary to force a tie game, and then all they had to do was kick the extra point and win. DJ Moore, idiot of the week. I'm going to put it out there. My idiot of the week in the NFL takes his helmet off. No, and listen, the players know this is a penalty. I mean, it is if you take your helmet off during a touchdown celebration, it is an automatic penalty if you're on the field. In the end zone, takes his helmet off, throws it, right? Whatever, does his, taunts the crowd. That backs them up 15 yards for the extra point. I texted John during the game. I said, he's going to miss
He's
now.
going to miss this.
Because of karma, the football karma. Listen, sportsmanship is a thing, and there is football karma. I really believe that in all sports, but football especially. I said he's going to miss the kick. He misses the kick. Not only does he miss the kick, but they go into overtime, have a chance to win in overtime. Don't. The Falcons win in overtime. So no one's going to remember the amazing play that he made, record-breaking play. No one cares. All you remember is the penalty, the stupidity, the selfishness, the ego, and the loss.
Mark, I agree with you. In his defense, he was not on the field when he took his helmet off, and by NFL rules, that is not something you can penalize.
Well, he was in the end zone.
No, he had stepped out of the end zone by the time he had taken his helmet off. Nuts.
I still think
now. I was about to say now they probably would have hit him with excessive celebration or something like that, But actually, it was not what he did as far as the helmet coming off was not a penalty. But
again, they know better.
Way excessive, way over the top.
And he's been in that moment before. As a player, you're a veteran player, right? Like you've made amazing plays before. I don't care how amazing the play is. You can make the best play we've ever seen. You do not do something that automatically puts your team at a disadvantage. Right. You have control over that as a teammate. And if I'm his teammate, I look at him and I'm furious because that is so selfish and so stupid. Right. And listen, no one cares. Look at the final score. You lost the game. No one cares that you made a phenomenal play like that because you lost the game. And now the Atlanta Falcons are the top team in that division right now. And it's unbelievable. So that gets me fired up though, because that bothers me because as a player and as someone who coaches football, like that is just so selfish and that does not belong anywhere on a football field, that kind of thing. Because that directly cost them that game. I don't think the dude misses an extra point if it's not 15 yards back. I mean, it was a 50
it was a 40. I was about to say it was nearly a 50-yard extra point. It's 48 yards. So yeah, it's ridiculous. I also briefly want to touch on the Ravens-Bucks just because, we know that, Brady and the Bucks are not the same team. I think this was a big win for the Ravens, right? They improved to 5-3 in their division. They're right in the thick of things. Browns are 3-5, Bengals are 4-4, Steelers are dead. They're 2-6. So Ravens sit comfortably at the top of their division right now. All they kind of have to do is maintain How are you feeling about them? Do you still think your Lamar Jackson thesis of this team is not really going to be much either for the rest of the season or in the playoffs still holding up? Is this even a win they should be super excited about, since it kind of was a close margin win against decaying Tampa Brady team?
No, I don't think they should be. I mean, obviously a win's a win. You should be happy about it, but the Ravens didn't look great by any means. For most of the first half, they were losing this game. And defensively, they struggled. A lot of 50-50 balls down the field that receivers were making the play on against their defensive backs. I mean, Mike Evans had a few of them, and I understand he's a great player, but just stuff that is under your control. Like, you can make those plays, and it's a lot of it. I mean, Lamar didn't look great either, right? Like, he eventually, here's the thing too. Like, when they start to run Lamar, they're much better. And for some reason, they get weird with their play calling, where sometimes they want to take risk and run them, sometimes they don't. It's like, dude, just run your offense where it's at its best. Don't be scared.
Right.
Don't hold back. He needs to be included for your team to be great. And the problem is like I said, when they fall behind in games, it's dangerous, because now you know that they have to throw, and Lamar's not nearly as good when you know that the Ravens are throwing, because
Right.
you drop into coverage, you can have someone spy him and make sure he doesn't scramble, and he's going to force throws down the field that are errant. So that's why I think the Ravens could struggle.
Definitely. Yeah, and I agree with all those points. Obviously, being at the top of their division is good, but they definitely have a few weaknesses. I'm also curious, maybe they're more reserved about Lamar because they do actually intend on signing him to a long-term extension.
Yeah.
Or maybe Lamar is more reserved as a runner because he knows that he's not getting signed to a long-term extension, and he wants to make sure that he's into top shape for whatever team wants to, sign him. So
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things there. Let's move on. I think there's like two more games worth talking about here, right? We got Bills Packers. Packers hung in there better than I thought they would for this game, but it was not to the credit of the Packers. It was the credit to the Bills. I think like kind of playing with an ego. Like, I honestly think that they just came into
Oh,
this
for
game and felt
sure.
like they were going to win it and started, playing like Madden style football, like
For
it
sure.
for a huge chunk of the game because of that.
Yeah. I mean, coming out of the tunnel, I mean, Stephon Diggs starting stuff with a lot of the Packers players. Like, the Bills are playing with an attitude right now, and they people around Buffalo, that team, they know that they're the team to beat. So and the way they're playing, no one can argue that. They're a tough team on offense, on defense, on special teams. I think that they have the best player in football at quarterback. I think you have receivers that can make plays. You have an awesome offensive scheme. Your defense has even stopped the Chiefs in recent weeks, which is one of the better offenses in the league. You're smiling if you're in Buffalo, right? So I think going into every game, especially a home game, especially a primetime game, they're ready to go. So, and yeah, the score doesn't reflect this, but the Bills were in control of this game the whole time. They stayed aggressive. Josh Allen threw a couple picks late on drives that could have easily been scoring drives, and this score would have been much different. The Packers just couldn't get it done offensively. They couldn't do anything. And really, the only thing they could do was run the ball, but it was too little too late. When they started to actually move the ball, they were already down 2 scores in the second half, and
Yeah, and
time
you,
was
you
ticking.
can't start running the ball at that point.
No,
Exactly. It's always something you have to be very proactive about, very intentional about, and not abandon. Right. I think that's one of
right.
the biggest things about having a good run game is that you got to stick to it and keep teams honest. Yeah, I agree with you. It does make me wonder, like, do the Bills need to get like humbled down for another game, right? Because I don't think you can play like that cocky like that, for the rest of the season, the rest of the regular season against good competition and not have like one team kind of surprise you. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we can't just blow out every team we play. Got it.
The thing is, I mean, the thing is, John, like, I don't know, like, they're playing really, really well, and they are cocky. You're right, and they are taking risks at stupid points in the game, still throwing risky throws when you're up to, like, that is dumb. It gave the Packers a chance, right? And that was stupid, because they could have just, I mean, they could have just slowed down the pace, made a couple nice, easy little small throws, run the ball, and get first downs, kick another field goal, continue to extend their lead. Instead, they stayed aggressive. They kept taking shots, and listen, that's just what I think they're going to be. And with Josh Allen at quarterback, man, I think they can be as cocky as they want. I mean, that guy's in control, and he's a humble enough guy in just himself, where I think the guys around him can be cocky, because, well, they have reason to be cocky right now in Buffalo. And I don't know if they're going to lose again. I've been saying this for I really don't know if they're going to lose.
You've been saying this since week 1, basically. And
they did lose one, but
then they lost to Miami, and then you were like, okay, well, they're not going to lose again.
I don't think they're going to lose again. I mean, the Miami one surprised me, but I honestly don't know if this team loses again. Like that was they got one out of the way. And again, a winnable game, by the way, against Miami. Like it wasn't like they got beat. They beat themselves a little bit in that game. So
definitely,
they're a tough team to beat.
Definitely. And then moving on to Bengals Browns. Look, in a competitive AFC with as many good teams as there are, I just got to say this about the Bengals. I don't think their offensive line is going to hold up. And look, I know they were able to overcome all odds with that situation last year and make it to the Super Bowl. I just don't think that can happen 2 years in a row. It is too much of a weakness to exploit. Myles Garrett was just absolutely eating that offensive line alive that entire game. It forced Burrow to make a bunch of shoddy decisions. It did result in turnovers. And look, I mean, the Browns are like a mid-tier team, and I think with Watson, they might even be a good team. But I just simply think it's not even so much their competition as much as it is that matchup against any good pass rush is just not going to hold up for 4 quarters. And to me, last season feels a lot more like luck with an incredible quarterback and an incredible wide receiver pretty much putting the whole team on their back versus them being solid enough of a foundation to actually consistently make those runs in the playoffs year over year over year until that offensive line problem's addressed.
Yeah, I'll say I'm not going to give up on the Bengals. They were without Jamar Chase, and it was. Listen, is their offensive line great? No, it wasn't last year. To your point, but I mean, if you have Joe Burrow at the helm of your team, and you have a good enough defense to make some plays, and their defense has looked really good at times. They didn't look great last night, but this team's good enough to make another run, and they have enough weapons, and they have the right guy at quarterback, and they have a smart head coach who has a good relationship with this quarterback, and they understand how to call plays, and they looked really, really good last week. The Bengals did, and listen, the NFL is a week-to-week thing. I know it changes quick, but I'm not going to give up on the Bengals. I trust Joe Burrow. The AFC is tough as hell. I mean, they're not going to get back to the Super Bowl if that's what you're saying, but they'll be in the playoffs, and I think that they'll be right there competing with these teams that we see win the Super Bowl. I'm talking Chiefs. I'm talking Bills.
That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. I mean, I'm not giving up on them at all. I think that there's plenty of talent on that team, and I do think that they got great coaches and an amazing quarterback, and that's all you really need. But I do think that unless that problem formally gets addressed, where Burrow has plenty of time in the pocket to make decisions, that they are not going to be a team that goes on a run in the playoffs, right? They might make the playoffs and lose in the first round. I mean, depending on the matchup, right? I think whoever's got a pass rush to actually give that offense trouble, Burrow's a leader. He can really clutch out some stuff, but if you're running for your life an entire game, it's very hard to come out with a win. So that's kind of the statement I'm trying to make there. But yeah, I think I don't think anything else here is incredibly interesting. So if you're down, we can move on to next week's predictions.
I just want to shout out my fantasy team real quick. I had AJ Brown, I had DeAndre Hopkins, I had Kamara, I had Hawkinson. So, and I had Mariota. So my team put up 180 points, I believe.
Wow.
And I'll just say, I mean, I had 2 players that had 3 touchdowns. So
I just want to shout out my fantasy team. I had AJ Brown, and then I got Nick Chubb and Pollard too. So definitely had a good week myself. Look,
a good week. I just want to give another shout out.
Sorry, go ahead.
To Caleb Kalenko Cab, our guest most recently on our last episode, was talking a little trash. He's actually the number 1 seed in our league now, and I'm coming for him. So just put that out there.
I hope. When do you guys play each other? Do you know? Or do you have them circled on the schedule?
I don't know. I pretty soon, probably. I haven't played him yet. But he's 1, I'm 2 right now, and I would also like to put out that I started 0-3 in that league, and I have not lost since. So
that's grit, baby. Let's go.
That's what we do. The Lions could do it, maybe.
All right. So Thursday night football, we got Eagles versus Texans. I mean, it's at Texans, but I do not think this is the week that the Eagles lose their undefeated streak. I'm gonna go Eagles here.
I also will go Philly. And just like when you look at Philly's schedule, another team, like when will they lose? Not sure because their schedule is pretty generous.
Eases up big time. Yeah, they would have to beat themselves in order to lose, I think, for the rest of the season. So,
Yeah.
Chargers Falcons. And look, this Falcons team may be better than we admitted, but I still think they're the freaking Falcons, and I think the Chargers need to come away with a win here in order to stay in the thick of things within their division. So I'm going to go Chargers.
I'm also going to go with the Chargers. They're coming off of a bye week, and they had an extra week to prepare for Atlanta. So I like Herbert with rest and with preparation.
Definitely. Dolphins Bears going to go Dolphins. I don't know. Like, are the Bears going to put up some like college kids that they signed last week for their pass rush, or what's the situation going on there?
I don't know, but Chicago is. I don't know. They just beat New England a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, so you can't completely give up on them. And they got Claypool, so maybe they're trying to go all in for this season. But with that being said, I'm actually going to pick Chicago. This is in Chicago.
What are you doing?
Tua, listen, Tua is going into a tough environment. Justin Fields, he's showing some signs of life. They got some explosion on the offense. I'm gonna go with a shout out the Bears.
Oh God, that was horrible to sit through. Look, if that does happen, and we'll make sure to recap, like, you can make fun of me all you want and say that you're the true oracle and not me. Even though I'm the one who picks the one-off random games and usually ends up right. But like, this Dolphins team with Tua back is so legit. They're going against the Bears. Like, let's not forget the Pats aren't that good. It was an exciting win for them, but whatever, man. Whatever. Panthers at Bengals. Yeah, I think DJ Moore is going to catch a 75-yard pass and then just launch his helmet into the stands, and they're going to have to kick another 50-yard PAT and lose the game. So I'm going to go Bengals here.
Yeah, I'm going to go Bengals as well for reasons I said earlier. Joe Burrow, their coaching. What the Panthers? Listen, they got more bad karma coming their way because that was so bad. What happened this past week? Just terrible.
Definitely. Packers at Lions. Look,
don't do it, John.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to say, if the Packers do somehow find a way to choke this game, they're so dead. But
They're dead.
I'm gonna go Packers here.
This is why I'm picking Green Bay. This is the ultimate get back game. This is the ultimate. Listen, I don't know. Listen, when you're single and I don't know, you're on a dry spell, you haven't really met any women for a while or any men, right? And you're just, whatever. Sometimes you need a get back, right? It might not be a 10. It might not be the girl of your dreams or the guy of your dreams, but it gets you back in the game.
Just kind of like old reliable from high school that you flirted with back in the day.
Maybe it's somebody that's just a little right under your standard, I don't know, something, whatever, to boost your confidence. The Lions are that nice, pretty 5. They're a nice 5. They're a total 5 rating, and the Packers are like that 6 or 7 guy that's trying to feel like a 10. They were a 10 in high school. They may be gaining a little weight. They're trying to get back, and that is what's going to happen this week, dude. They're just going to take advantage of a puppy dog team like the Lions, and I think they get back on the right track. Aaron Rodgers owns Detroit just like he owns Chicago, has for a long time. I think he comes to Ford Field and he puts the Lions into the graves. And I think that he rises the Packers up. And this is the start of the turnaround for Green Bay.
I think Zach Wilson just took copious notes of what you just said there, by the way. I think he's going to deploy some of those strategies. I don't know, the next bingo night or wherever he goes looking for his next lady. Raiders, Jags. We got two win teams. I'm going to have to go Raiders here just because I feel like they're more talented. But a part of me thinks that Duval's going to win this one just because they have, I don't know, maybe a brighter future ahead of them. But I'm going to go Raiders.
I'm also going to go Raiders. And the only reason I am is similar to the Green Bay thing. I think the frustration continues to build, and sometimes, like with enough frustration, teams come out and play really well. And the Raiders have shown that I think that they're capable of playing good football. It doesn't show in their record, but they have played much better football, I think, than Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the Raiders.
Colts, Pats. I'm going to go Pats here just because I think the Colts just don't have things figured out, and while the Patriots aren't very good, they still have somebody that knows how to plan for their opponent incredibly well in William Achek. So I'm going to go Pats there.
Are the Patriots starting Mac Jones again is the question, because I think they are, and I think that they lose if they do that. I think again, football karma. Zappy is the guy.
Zappy is the guy. I agree.
And listen, Bill Belichick is doing what a lot of teams do, being stubborn, being stupid. It's been pretty clear who's been the better quarterback as of the last few weeks, and he's forcing the hand on Mac Jones because he wants to be right. He was probably very much in the decision of drafting Mac Jones, doesn't want to be wrong. So he's trying to force that to be right. And that's going to cost him here, because I think that the Colts play good defense, and I think that they're going to play good enough defense to win this game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, ugly game, but the Colts get it done.
Interesting. Bills, Jets. I think we're going to go Bills on this one. Honestly, this is a great test to see how good this Jets team is under Bob Saleh. Like I'm excited to see just how well they handle the Bills at home, right? A little bit of an advantage there, but you got to go Bills here.
Yeah, the Jets, coming off of a loss, right, in their division to the Patriots last week, and they hung around, and the Patriots have owned the Jets, and there's something special there in that rivalry because of everything that happened with Belichick, taking the head coaching job for New York and being there like a few days and resigning and instantly taking the Patriots job, which, changed the course of NFL history for sure. But the Bills are a tough matchup for a young Jets team, and I don't care how good the Jets play. This is too big of a matchup for them. So I'm gonna go Bills.
For sure. Vikings at Commanders. Look, to the Commanders' credit, I did not expect them to be 4-4 at this point in the season. So good on them. But with that being said, I'm going to go Vikings here.
I'm actually going to go Washington. I'm going to go Washington because they have something clicking, right? Like without Wentz, there seems to be something happening, right? And again, this is another example. Do not force something to happen if it shouldn't, right? Wentz wasn't the guy for them. He wasn't working, and they've looked much better ever since he's been out. And their defense is clicking. And listen, Washington is playing pretty good team football. It doesn't look pretty, but they're playing better. And Minnesota is due for that, I don't know, alert moment. It hasn't happened yet. It was a little bit scary with the Cardinals for a while, but this is in Washington, and Washington just, I think, is a little bit hungrier, and the hungry dog usually eats.
And
Washington.
This is what, year 3 of Heineke, not the starter, but actually the starter for them. And honestly,
yeah, again, he's looked really good, and he makes some stupid mistakes, but he brings you a lot.
Not a bad.
He gives you a better chance to win than the guys they've been putting there.
Absolutely. Hawks versus Cardinals. Gonna go Seahawks. I just think they're the better team, the more complete team all around.
Yeah,
it's hilarious I'm saying that, but
isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? I'm actually gonna go the Cardinals.
You've done this to yourself a few times throughout the season.
I know. I talk about coaches that should be fired. Kingsbury is right there with those coaches that should be fired, and this could be the final test. They don't pull this one off. Seattle, this is a huge opportunity for Arizona to get back on the right track against the division's leader, and no one saw this coming from the Seahawks, but Kyler, DeAndre Hopkins, like they have a lot of guys that can get it done, and when things start to click, they're tough to beat. And listen, they've looked okay, they just haven't won a lot of games. I think they get this one done against Seattle. I think Seattle struggles against the pass a little bit, and I don't think they have a guy that can handle DeAndre Hopkins. So
fair. Rams, Bucks. Man, this is tough because these are two teams that I just feel like are not that good. I think that the Rams are going to win this one. That's my speculation, but it's tough. It's close.
I do too. I think the Rams will get it done. And it's weird seeing the Bucs struggle like this. And normally, when Tom Brady plays against Matthew Stafford, in one game that happened, I would say Tom Brady all day, every day. The Rams aren't good, but the Bucs are worse. And I think that the Rams matchup wise, now I will say this: I don't know if Cooper Kupp's going to play, which puts a huge, huge, huge question in terms of what they're going to be able to do because their whole offense goes through him. But even if he doesn't play, I think the Rams could get it done. I think that they play much better against what they're trying to do on the secondary.
Sure. Titans Chiefs. Yeah, I'm shocked the Titans are 5-2, but I'm gonna go Chiefs here.
I'm also going to go Chiefs here. Too much firepower. Too much firepower. Mahomes.
Just the better team.
Also, Chiefs coming off of a bye.
That's right. I forgot about that. So they had 2
Yeah.
weeks to prepare. It's gonna be big, especially if you're Andy Reid. Always got
Yeah.
tricks. And then Ravens Saints. Look,
Don't, John.
no, I'm absolutely about to do this. The Saints, this is their week. Look, they have to turn it around at some point. They have to start beating
No.
some mid-tier teams. I think the Ravens are a perfect target to actually make a statement, get that dub, make something happen, and win the NFC South. So I'm going Saints.
I'm going Ravens because just to spite you, honestly.
Sure.
I think that the Saints could easily win this game, but I don't want to pick the Saints because I know how bad you want them to win. And I unfortunately have to pick the Ravens for that reason. I don't know. Lamar maybe gets loose a little bit. I don't know. They play pretty good. They play a lot of man-to-man, provides the opportunity for scrambling. And Lamar, he likes to scramble. So
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Look, if that Saints defense was clicking like they were last week, then I'm feeling pretty good about it. So there's our picks. Man, trade deadline, midseason in the NFL. Honestly, I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm just antsy to see how these next few weeks progress, see all those teams that are kind of fighting for those wild card spots. But I think we kind of already know where a lot of this is headed. A lot of season left, but I think the teams that are truly Super Bowl contenders have revealed themselves at this point. I don't know if you're getting that same vibe.
That's definitely true. I think that those middle of the pack teams, though, there's a lot of them, right? And I think we're going to find out over these next few weeks which one of those teams can claw their way into the fight. But yeah, who's going to win the overall fight, the Super Bowl? I think we already know. There's probably 2 or 3 teams that have significantly shown that those are the favorites. The rest of the pack is just hoping to get in and have a chance.
Right.
But this is the time of the year where there's no more hiding. Like if you're the Detroit Lions with one win, either you're really, really bad and people think you are, or you start to put it together now or never. Green Bay, everyone thought you were going to be good. You've been a letdown. This is your chance to turn it around. There's no more hiding starting right around this time of year. So,
Absolutely.
And trade deadline happened. If you didn't make your move, you didn't make your move, and you have to forever hold your peace with that. So,
absolutely. All right, I think that's all we got for this week's episode. We'll see everybody next week. Keeping that Wednesday cadence. We apologize about last week. That was completely my fault. But we'll see you next week, my friend.
We'll see you, buddy.